Hi, Carol, and welcome to the podcast. I am so excited to have you on. I'm really excited because you are a wealth of progesterone knowledge, not just progesterone knowledge, but that's something that you are a world-renowned expert in. I think it was Lindsay Berkson who might have introduced me to you because you did a panel with her and Dr. Brownstein and a few other people at the beginning of the year. I was actually in Bali with my team practitioner and I watched it. And so my team practitioner, Michelle, and we were like playing with our progesterone after we listened to you. We're like, oh, we'll just bump it up some more, bump it up some more, and bump it up some more. And since then, because of your wisdom, I've been sharing it with a lot of my clients and it's incredible, the changes, right? So we're going to get into it. So very excited to speak to you all about that, all about progesterone intolerance, sensitivity, all that stuff. So you have been treating clients, patients, mainly women, I think, I'm not sure, for a long
few
time.
men.
You men?
A few men too, but so I do know other hormones besides progesterone.
Yeah.
Somebody on a Facebook page asked me, you always talk about progesterone, don't you know anything else? I said, everybody on this page is deficient in progesterone.
Yes, you are a wealth of knowledge.
So that was a big thing. And my career in this is over 30 years old. And I started working with a compounding pharmacy, and we specialized in extreme PMS. And our guidance for that was Katarina Dalton. She published her work as like 50s and 60s. So this is old stuff. She coined the term PMS, premenstrual syndrome. And she also pioneered dosing with progesterone, and her doses were lovely. She started with injectable, but then she switched to vaginal or rectal suppositories. 400 milligrams was a minimum dose for her. With the compounding pharmacy I worked with, we were using the basis of a study by Hargrove and Maxson, and they wanted to see if oral progesterone delivered in a capsule with oil could work just as well because of the convenience. And for the most part, we found that it did. But the practitioners that were working with PMS, and I'm talking, this can be really severe. It can be life-threatening. People become suicidal and terrible migraine pain, like you can't do anything. Some real severe things, and even murderous. Murders have been committed under the throes of these hormone imbalances. So that's the extreme. So I've seen the extreme and everything in between. And what I know is that progesterone works when you give enough. So we would start at a fairly large dose, like 100 milligram capsules 4 times a day, and go up from there. And that was okay for some women, did just fine. Others needed much more, and they could also use other dosage forms. Their doctors would give them like a sublingual troche to get the level up quicker, or vaginal rectal solutions to get the levels up quicker. We also found that if your symptoms are relieved by what you're doing, you can quickly get rid of a lot of them if you dose progesterone again and again till you reach it. And that's so empowering for women. I can't begin to tell you, when somebody feels that now all their anxiety just disappears and they can sleep all night because they used enough progesterone. Now all of a sudden they feel empowered. Before they felt like, I don't know what's going on with my body. I don't know what to do. And so my goal is really to reiterate Dr. Dalton's original research and let women know that the tools are out there and the truth is out there. You can do amazing things and have amazing results with progesterone. So I do some private consultations and coaching. 100% of the time, if somebody doesn't listen to me, and uses less than I tell them, or doesn't bump up the dose, they're failing. There's this gray zone. One Facebook page calls it the estrogen kickback zone.
Oh yeah, I want to talk about that with you. I've got
So
so many questions. I'm like, hang on, wait, I got a question there. I got a question there. Can I pause and because I want to talk about it. That is that okay if I interrupt you?
Yes. Yep.
All right. So starting at 400 milligrams as kind of the minimum is what you're saying for women. And can I just ask, is this primarily when you have a woman who's got PMS? That's the big thing. It's like the mental health is kind of the reason why we're starting high. So correct me if I'm wrong, would it be mental health? So mainly anxiety and sleep issues and PMS. Would they be the three big ones that you would just keep going higher and higher and higher until we eliminate those in a woman who is of the right age?
And let me pop one more thing into that. It's vasomotor stuff, hot flashes and night sweats.
And lots of people think that's low estrogen.
No, it's low progesterone. It starts happening just as progesterone dips, and you may have the highest levels of estrogen in your whole lifespan at that time. And so we have this concept, urban myth, if you will, that it's estrogen that will help the vasomotor response. And maybe it comes from the approval of Premarin, conjugated equine estrogens, for the treatment of vasomotor symptoms. And indeed, it helps. But Premarin's not just estrogen. I have a nice paper that includes 60 identified steroidal molecules in Premarin, and there's more unidentified. We can't match it with anything because we don't know what it is. And those multiple steroidal type hormones, all similar in structure. Some of them are more estrogenic. Some of them have a little progesterone-like activity. Some of them even have testosterone-like activity. So if we take Premarin and just call it estrogen, that's not really correct. So we do have this sense that, okay, we're giving women estrogen and their vasomotor stuff is helped. Yes, it is, but it could be any one of those 60 plus things.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
is there a ceiling? Because I know, like I've got some clients who are playing with their progesterone. One has really debilitating anxiety. And so she's and she's now combining a topical with an oral, and I want to get into all that with you. But she's still got this anxiety. Now she's probably only on, let's say, 300, 400 milligrams. So she's only on 400, right? So it's like up. But is there a ceiling?
No, I will just give you like in the luteal phase, high luteal phase, if you were to take your serum, would be 30 to 40 nanograms per mil. That's the highest that you usually get. During pregnancy, especially all the way to the third trimester, I've seen lab reports now. The labs are going to 550 nanograms per mil. So we have to somehow get enough progesterone to get beyond the pregnancy level to even start to talk about any kind of toxicity. So we can't do it. It's impossible to do it.
Yeah, so it's impossible to do with the types of progesterone HRT we're using.
Yeah, it's hard to get to the high luteal phase with what we're using.
Isn't that incredible? So progesterone's really safe. It's really high dose on it.
One of the safest things you can do, and it really disturbs me. Like many women have been put on benzodiazepam, working at the GABA receptor. Well, so does progesterone, and its metabolites work there too. So we get started on progesterone and they have a little anxiety, but they run for the benzo instead of more progesterone. Exactly the wrong thing to do, because the progesterone will take care of that. And they're so accustomed to relying on the benzo. And so many women are on these drugs for years and it does nothing but harm.
Well, maybe this is a perfect time to talk about why why might some people get exacerbated, and I've seen this, exacerbated symptoms of anxiety, heart palpitations, insomnia, when they're just on a low dose, 100, 200, 300 milligrams of progesterone. Number one, why? And this might be that estrogen kickback. And so for the ladies listening, this is to really encourage you to not stop, because what often happens with the physicians as well is that they get scared. And they go, oh, you've got exacerbated anxiety or symptoms, go lower. And that is the worst thing you could do. You get worse.
Yeah, we get that from the chemical industry of pharma. You know, if you can't tolerate one dose, then a lower dose. Progesterone is very, very interesting. So one Facebook page calls it estrogen kickback, which I think is a cool term. It sort of describes it. So when you use progesterone and you have worsening or even new emergence of symptoms, like all of a sudden you have headaches that you didn't have before, or you have more fluid retention, more bloating, more anxiety, panic. And playing with those low doses is dangerous, in my opinion, and many prescribers are giving them out, and it's dangerous. They can send women to the emergency room with heart palpitations, and they feel like they're dying. And there's nothing wrong with their hearts. It's the underdose of progesterone. So progesterone, according to John Lee, and I've really not found the resource that says this, but in practicality, it does happen. Progesterone supports whatever estrogen you have on board, and will get stronger as you start using progesterone, stronger than it was before. And then coupled with that, progesterone has so many functions in the body. Just a major one would be if you don't have enough cortisol from your adrenals, which you need to cope with stress. And if you don't have enough of the metabolites of cortisol, which there are numerous and serve as kind of a reservoir, well, let's just say that's empty. So you put that tiny bit of progesterone in, you zoom up the symptoms of estrogen and quickly divert it over to hydrocortisone, which you desperately need, and nothing to balance that huge impact of estrogen that you started. I just saw in a medical paper, which really I found promising. They talked about progesterone allopregnanolone, one of the metabolites of progesterone, inversion. Small doses make you feel worse.
Wow, yeah.
You don't have. Large doses get you exactly the action that you want.
Okay. And that's the big point of this podcast interview, is get that message across.
Yes. So the message is out there. It's in the literature. They recognize the literature, but clinicians do not know this.
I would love to see some of that literature if you'd be willing to share it. Yeah.
I have to find it. I can't show you my table here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where did I see that?
Absolutely.
If I find it again, I'll email it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, that actually happened to me. So when I started on progesterone, what I noticed, and I see this in a lot of clients, is I start to get tender breasts, right? And that's one of the things. And I want to ask you, if you go high enough, you will eliminate the tender breasts, right?
Yeah, in hours. In hours.
In hours.
Yes, and even put some cream right on your breasts.
The cream. Okay, so a couple of things. So number one, what I was saying, I've got so much. So yeah, so I got tender breasts. A lot of clients, I noticed the same thing. Oh, I started the progesterone and my breasts got tender, but it goes away. Now for me, I started to feel cysts, which I never knew I had. And I went and got an ultrasound. I realized, oh, I have a couple of cysts, right? And so do you think also, and the breast tenderness completely eliminated once I stuck with that progesterone. I always got a little bit before my cycle, but with that progesterone, it completely went away and doesn't exist anymore. So you got to kind of push through or go higher, like you said. So with cysts, do you find as well with breast cysts is getting enough progesterone? I think iodine's very important too, as you would, know Brownstein, love him. But getting enough progesterone would also help with the cysts, would you say?
Yes, I had fibrocystic breast disease. And when I started working in this field, I used a over-the-counter progesterone cream. It had about 30 milligrams per dose. I was in my early 40s. And I learned that progesterone is good for facial wrinkles, especially these little ones around the eyes.
Oh, that's good to know. We like
So
that.
I said to myself, well, I'm going to try this and put some progesterone cream on my face. 4 months later, I noticed my breasts were like almost clear of all breast lumps except the biggest one,
Wow.
which had gotten smaller. And I happened to talk to Dr. Eugene Shippen, who is a pretty good pioneer in the use of bioidentical hormones too.
Mhm.
And he said, oh, we always get rid of fibrocystic breasts. He said with progesterone and iodine. So he gave me a little recipe for iodine and spring water, which I used and gone. I had one
Wow.
colleague try this and that didn't quite do it. But then she added DIM
Oh, yeah.
to her protocol, then it disappeared.
Okay.
So obviously she had a little higher
Yeah.
estrogen burden.
Do you
So
think, sorry to interrupt once more, do you think topical is best if somebody does have the cysts or the fibrocystic? Do you think that doing, I know that you're a big fan of topical progesterone. And so do you think iodine topically with the topical progesterone on the breasts is a good idea?
it is a good idea, but I'm a fan of progesterone in any way, shape, or form that you
Yeah.
can get.
Yeah.
What's really changed now is that we have some over-the-counter progesterone creams that
Yeah.
are in nice large doses
Yeah.
and with manufacturers that pay attention to the quality of the cream. And since I'm not a prescriber, this
Mhm.
opens the door for me or people like me to have access to progesterone that is effective and can work. Wherever you put the progesterone on, when you put a cream on, it has to get through the stratus corneum in your skin, that barrier.
Mhm.
Once it does, it goes into the bloodstream. So when you're putting a cream on, wherever you put it on, for seconds before it goes, the circulation goes back to the liver, you have an enhanced concentration right in that area. So hence the recommendation, put it right on your breast. Iodine too, same reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
A little bit
Fabulous.
enhanced concentration.
Excellent. And now, when you're saying to go up like I think I've heard you say once before, correct me if I'm wrong, that you will suggest to your patients to put on or to use their progesterone every 15 minutes. Have I got that right? Until I think you've said calm prevails. So this might also be for insomnia or the heart palpitations, right? The anxiety, maybe the breast tenderness. Like you said, it can go away in hours. So kind of,
Somebody threatening suicide.
oh,
Just,
yes,
it'll
absolutely.
it will absolutely flip. And actually, I was rereading something from Ray Pete. Dr. Pete
Yep.
also mentioned this. So it's not original to me, but I've certainly shared it and I can see it in action with people doing that. And especially when you're starting, and if this kind of kickback thing occurs, it's essential you get over it and get over it fast.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're left with the impression that progesterone's not your friend and won't do you any good. And you, in fact, are the person who needs it worse than the next one who,
Yeah,
who
absolutely.
put on a small amount and nice, but nothing remarkable. But
Yes,
they don't have they're not very symptomatic either. So they
yeah.
don't.
So if you're symptomatic, and again, it's the breast tenderness, it's the anxiety, it's all the things, and you put that on and it makes you feel worse, go higher. Don't go lower.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, let's talk about, and I do see this a fair bit, grogginess, fatigue, women start on, and usually though it's with oral. I'm not sure. I think I've seen once this happen with topical, like the Onus cream is one that I suggest for a lot of clients. And perhaps once it's happened, but let's talk about the grogginess, the fatigue, the sleepiness that can happen. Have you got any idea why this happens? Is it that they just should switch the form? Maybe it's sustained release.
Okay. The funny thing is, as we were using these larger doses for PMSers, it was a long time before we put a warning label on progesterone that could get dizziness, drowsiness, because percentage-wise, it wasn't coming up that much.
Mm-hmm.
Strangely enough, but then I did see a paper way back when, and I don't have my hands on it. They looked at 10 women and gave them oral progesterone of some strength, which I don't remember. And 1 out of the 10 got drowsy. Okay, and the paper also speculated that it was the metabolite allopregnanolone. Allopregnanolone, they say, is as potent as phenobarbital as far as its ability to knock you out pretty much or create dizziness. And it does seem that this does occur more often with oral, but I've known it to occur with topical. Usually the idea is to change the route of administration, do sublingual, do vaginal, rectal on the skin to see if you can minimize the allo. But allopregnanolone is very, very useful. It's more powerful at the GABA receptor than the progesterone molecule. So it's very, very brain active. In fact, there is an approved drug now for postpartum depression. They will do IV allopregnanolone for some days continuously until your mood is improved, and then they'll send you home. Well, very expensive treatment, but you could do this with progesterone just as well. As you get that metabolite. So it's a positive and a negative, and it really is very, very individual. Some women have nothing. So I personally never experienced this in my life, all these decades of using progesterone, but somebody gifted me some capsules, just progesterone in capsules. So one morning I took 250 milligrams. And that did it. I felt it. So my trainer came over. He goes, "What's wrong with you? You look like you're drunk." I said, "It's progesterone." I said, "I've got to work out. We got to work out. I've got to metabolize this away." So I did that, and then I had a big breakfast, high protein, high fat breakfast. It was gone, and maybe that can be a helpful hint too, that you can. Even though it's there, maybe you can take some steps to help along the metabolism.
Interesting. Okay. So really try a different route. If it makes you sleepy, try a different route or exercise. And I've also heard that it can happen for a while, and then if you
go away, it'll go away. So I don't know what the best way for each individual is, but I think that's what you're dealing with, the allopregnanolone.
And I think was it Dr. Geraldine Pryor, said that it could be from a long-standing sleep deficiency?
I probably said that because I asked her.
I think it was you who said it. Yes.
That's what she said, and she gave me pause, like maybe, and that would account for why it would be excessive at first, and as you do get your sleep restored, and you actually do bank this stuff. I read some interesting studies on sleeping, and like your sleep deficits builds up, but you restore it, and you can store some resilience. So this is really interesting.
That is interesting. And the other thing is, I want to talk to you about Candida and progesterone, but you said you can bank some stuff. We can also bank these hormones, right? Because they're fat soluble, right? No, that's not true. Okay.
Because they're fat soluble.
So
might be an urban myth.
Oh wow!
Because people do say that, and John Lee said that, and other people do take that up, and I have yet to see anybody do a fat biopsy to show that. That there's a reservoir there, and I'll give you a couple examples. First of all, this Dr. Joe Robinson was at the University of Wisconsin. He was one of my teachers, and I considered doing graduate work with him, but I never finished pursuing that. But he was an expert on skin, eyes, and progesterone. The product Crinone, the vaginal progesterone product Crinone, was his invention. The Replens, the vaginal lubricant, was his invention. So we went to him and we said, "What about this fat storage thing that John Lee is promoting?" He goes, "What a bunch of rubbish."
Okay.
So he said, you just have to get it through the skin barrier into the circulation, and it's done. So I will also tell you this: we had a saliva testing lab emerge, and this lab started telling women, and they were doing very nicely on their progesterone. And by this time, that might have been the perimenopausal as well as the PMSers. And they started calling us and said they had their hormones tested with this saliva testing lab, and it was astronomical. And the lab was telling them they had to stop using progesterone. They had toxic amounts in their body,
Oh,
and
goodness.
it would persist at least 6 months.
Oh, goodness.
And their symptoms were back in 2 or 3 days. And that's when they call, what am I going to do? I have toxic progesterone and I have all my symptoms back. That's how quickly
Yeah.
that need for progesterone reemerged. I have one client, I'll just say, because she's using like 2,800 milligrams every day, and she's barely keeping her symptoms in check. Well,
Wow.
she, unknown to me, got it in her head. She thought she was feeling like getting her period, so she stopped today. Everything came crashing back one day.
Wow.
So there's not a storage there in operation. Now, I did say about hydrocortisone, there can be a reservoir in the ability to change to another hormone, and then the metabolites of cortisol. So as those rise over time, it's sort of a reservoir system, I believe, but it's nothing involved in fat storage.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, so the testing, I often say that symptoms never lie, but test results can. So that's something I'd love to get your thoughts on testing. And also, like, I think I've heard you say that you can though pulse your progesterone and you'd use your symptoms, right? So if you're going through a more stressful time of your life, perhaps then you need a little bit more than if you're cruising through and everything's hunky-dory. But this is where you would use your symptoms, right, as a gauge.
Right. If you know you've got, let's say you got a big presentation coming at work and a lot of responsibility or stressful time, just take some extra doses, prevent the anxiety from even starting. If you're going on vacation, use more in anticipation of your vacation, use more during your vacation. Your body's out of its normal situation where you've been using a set amount successfully. So you can get on top of that. Let me just talk about breakthrough bleeding.
Yes.
Because this is precisely what happens. Let's say you're menopausal and let's say you're taking maybe a couple hundred milligrams of progesterone every day with milligram of estradiol, and you're going along fine. You feel pretty good. And then all of a sudden you're spotty.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you call me and say, I'm spotty, I'll say, what's happened to you in the last couple months? Have you had more stress than usual or not? And they'll, oh yeah, we sold our house. Oh, my father-in-law died. Oh, my kids got this big problem at school. There's always something. In those times when there's a increased stress, your progesterone gets diverted. Cortisol will rise so you can deal with the stress. Progesterone's diverted to help you replenish that. During that time, estrogen becomes more dominant. You're building up some tissue. By the time you call me because you're spotting, things have calmed down, and progesterone's again balancing the estrogen you're using, and you built up a little tissue. Progesterone's a secretory hormone, will help you get rid of that, and hence the spotting. Contrary to this, if you go to your conventional doctor, they are forced to investigate any kind of cancer you might have, so you have to go through all sorts of procedures and whatnot, usually to no avail. There's nothing there to see, and you spend a lot of time in fear with that. So I don't know how to solve that, but the conventional attitude is you've got to check out any bleeding. I would say check first and see if you've had an unusual stress. It's,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I recognize that, and I am feeling a little better now.
Mm.
So your body's done what it needed to do. If that's
Mm.
not the case, then go get yourself checked out.
Okay, makes sense. So help me wrap my head around this. I have another client and she's had very long-standing insomnia. Got on progesterone. She dosed herself up. She was using the Onus cream. She dosed herself up to 800 milligrams, and she thinks it's the missing piece of the puzzle. So now she's getting better sleep. She's getting to sleep, although I think she needs a bit of estrogen because she's not staying asleep and she's, nearly 50. But that's another story. But what she's noticed is that she used to have very regular periods, but since upping her progesterone, she's now on 600 milligrams. She's having more consistent bleeding every couple of weeks. That's, I can't wrap my head around, because that's progesterone, like you said, is the secretory hormone, right? So what might be going on there? Any ideas with such little information?
Okay, well, there's some there. Well, first of all, well, what did you say her age was? You told
Oh,
me
I
an
think
age.
she's 49. I think
Okay.
she's about 49. Mhm.
Okay, so it's highly likely that she's not actually ovulating.
Mhm.
And it's also highly if you are using very high doses of progesterone, that you're stopping ovulation, you like mimicking pregnancy. If you're doing this in a follicular time, you
Mhm.
could actually stop an ovulation.
Yeah.
So you could have, there's a lot of estrogen stimulus there. So you're kind of playing around with, you're building up tissue, progesterone's trying to get it away with no sense of timing at
Yeah.
all. So in general, what's happening when women take it just during the luteal phase, it can often shorten their cycle time or lengthen it,
Mhm.
depending on the individual. So it's complex and maybe a little bit irritating,
Mhm.
but I'd still go back to the basics. Dose yourself according to your symptoms, and her sleep symptom is a
Mhm.
really good thing.
Yeah.
Now, if you'd like to address what happens to women when they wake up in the middle of the night and can't go back to sleep,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
is pretty common. So insulin and glucose are our most potent hormones.
Yeah.
And this is a real downfall too. A lot of people are testing hormones. They test sex hormones. Maybe they'll test a little adrenal hormones, but
Mhm.
they're ignoring insulin and glucose balance.
Yeah.
So if you're starting to have some insulin resistance and your
Mhm.
body drops into a low glucose time, adrenaline surges.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this surge of adrenaline is going to wake you up. Now, a couple things happening there.
Mhm.
So it points to one, the liver hasn't stored enough glycogen
Mhm.
for you to last the whole night. So you may look at doing some liver therapy,
Mhm.
support, detox,
Mhm.
whatever. Another thing that happens is some of us have trouble methylating.
Mm.
And you probably hear about it a little bit. Some clients I have, they've already had the genetic SNPs test, or you can, on a general blood test, you could look at homocysteine. If it's elevated, you're not methylating that very well either. It's the primary detoxification pathway for adrenaline.
Yeah,
So
right.
you get yourself in this wide awake state,
Mhm.
and now you can't get out of it because it's lingering. And so
Mhm.
you're going to be unable to sleep till that comes down. So really three things there. Progesterone helps balance adrenaline.
Yeah.
Eating something
Mhm.
would help you get your blood glucose and not be dependent on adrenaline.
Mhm.
And then three, use some
Mhm.
methylated, like methylated folic acid, methylated
Mhm.
B12
Yeah.
can help with that.
Yeah.
And then you can look at the liver, see if you can do some liver support. And then underlying that, you've got to look at your insulin glucose balance.
Mhm.
So I have one colleague, she said she had, now more than one, because I've talked to her again, she's got patients who wear continuous glucose monitors.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
she said to me the first time, she said, my client has hot flashes, night sweats. When she does, her blood glucose has dropped to 50,
Yeah.
which is very, very low.
Yeah.
And that was consistent. So you have to change how you're eating to get away from being insulin resistant. So that's a really big piece. And I ask about diet all the time. Everybody says, oh, I eat very carefully, organic, a very clean diet, but I have to dig deeper. Like then they're eating these smoothies with pea protein.
Yeah.
It's really not getting enough protein for their needs.
Exactly.
And
a big
really
problem.
their body is really deficient. This client that I said was at 2,800 milligrams, she was in the habit of using those nut and seed bars and a pea protein smoothie as her
Oh, I know. This
protein.
is
And her total cholesterol was 122.
Oh no.
Which is another big piece I found. Some of the worst problems occur when your cholesterol is not actually high enough.
Yeah.
In her case, she had a cholesterol test and it was marked as normal.
Yeah, it would be.
Less than 200 is normal.
Yeah, and mine's marked as supremely high if you're going by allopathic. Mine is through the roof. But yet I've had the coronary calcium scans, I've had the lipid oxidation, I know the, cholesterol, that's a whole nother topic, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's almost a spiritual molecule. So
I love that.
220 to 280 is the optimal for cholesterol.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I had a business partner and dear friend who was extremely hypothyroid, and high cholesterol can be an indicator. Thyroid's low too, is exceptionally high. She came from a very long-lived family. Her family all had high cholesterol, lived a long time. Not her. She started using statins and did it for decades.
Oh no.
And I warned her about the thyroid thing when I found out about it, but she didn't take it seriously. So she developed severe neurological disorder, and she was dead at 68.
Yeah, robbing the brain of its powerful cholesterol, protective cholesterol.
Right. So they did an autopsy because they couldn't figure out why she was having all those problems. And she told me, oh, I stopped the statins for a month and it didn't make any difference. Well, you've been taking it for 20 years.
Actually.
It's like incredible. So an autopsy, they said she had ALS. So about a year later after she died, there was a study showing that the statin drugs can produce ALS.
Oh no. Oh, that's terrible.
So, and not surprising.
Yeah. So much misinformation out there. It's hurting people. And then your point to protein, I'm glad you brought that up because, I see it all the time too. Women have no idea and they think, 2 eggs for breakfast is enough. It's like, my goodness, you're never going to, especially I work with a lot of midlife women, you're never going to counter that anabolic resistance on 12 grams of protein at breakfast time. You eat 12 grams of protein, how are you going to get the other 90 plus in throughout the day? Like, most women are lucky if they're eating 50 to 60 grams, and it's terrifying because they don't know the damage that it's doing, especially as we age. Protein's so important.
Yeah, and I've seen some studies that say as you age, your protein demands increase.
Absolutely. I've read those studies myself. Absolutely. But most people do the opposite, right? Our protein demand increases, our demand for resistance exercising increases, but how many women in menopause in their 50s, 60s, 70s and beyond are eating robust protein meals and lifting weights? It's the opposite that happens because maybe digestion becomes sluggish or whatever. There's a million cases why, but they start to eat less. And then don't even get me started on the midlife women who are so scared because all of a sudden they've put on 5 pounds, 10 pounds, and they're like, must stop eating. So they start to count their calories and then they say, oh, fasting's healthy, right? So I'm just going to fast. And really, it's an excuse for not eating. And the damage that gets done in midlife when you stop eating and you stop eating robust meals, I really am passionate about getting that message out there because so many women are under eating and thinking, oh, look, I'm nice and trim. But meanwhile, you're losing muscle mass. And you're at higher risk for dementia and osteoporosis and cancer and all these other diseases that rely on muscle mass and metabolic health.
Yep. Sarcopenia
Yeah.
is the killer. You lose all your body mass, you lose
Yeah.
your muscle, you lose
And
your
you don't
bone, you
have
lose
to.
everything.
And
You
you don't
don't.
have to, but it takes effort. You got to eat protein and lift weights, and people don't want to do that. Yeah, amazing. Okay, so just real quick, because I know we've been talking for a while now. Candida, could you touch on Candida and progesterone?
Yes, I can. Because after a while working with the PMSers,
Yeah.
for the most part, they did beautifully well until some of them did. And I go, well, how is this even possible that you can't thrive on progesterone?
Mm.
And that's when I twigged on the Candida problem. And this was in the days when William Crook was still alive, the yeast connection and the
Right.
women. I read a lot of yeast literature. If fed, a yeast culture in vitro will grow 100 times in a day, just
Well,
to tell you how big of a problem this can be. So in the meantime, I found out that progesterone, testosterone, hydrocortisone, if you're using any of those three as bioidentical hormone support, they can all cause an existing Candida overgrowth to overgrow further. What's consistent with the three of those things is that it does normalize your blood glucose. So now the yeast have more to eat, so they will grow. In case of progesterone, I never did try to memorize what immune complexes it involves, but in high progesterone, when you're pregnant, there's part of your immune system is suppressed in order for you to carry a foreign creature in your body so you don't reject it. That's one of the functions of progesterone during pregnancy. So that increases that break on your immune system that can occur with progesterone will favor Candida growing more and more and more. So what's the solution? It's, well, awareness that it's Candida is certainly one of the first things. And you do have to learn how to try to get on top of the Candida, get a better microbiome, and then you should be able to use progesterone and any of these hormones just fine. But you should pay attention to it, as this can be overwhelming. And I've had one of the things I did this chart thing. There used to be a group called Candida Research. They're located in Texas. They've folded, but the director of that gifted me with a whole pile of papers about the interactions of yeast and fungus of various sorts and on hormones. And some of these organisms actually do produce 17 beta estradiol all on their own.
Wow.
Some the mycotoxins just suck up every bit of estrogen you have.
Right.
So you can have these extremes of too high estrogen, too low estrogen. I certainly would look at the microbiome and the Candida issue.
Yeah.
If that's the case. So it's a bit of a juggling game, but it is something you need. And I like to put out one more thing. Endometriosis, highly associated with Candida overgrowth.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So yeah, that's often ignored too.
Yeah, oh, very much. Oh, the microbiome, so very important. And this is the thing, like a lot of women, I think they think, oh, I can just go on hormones. I can just take some hormones and I'll be fine. It's like, well, hold on. You have hormone receptors. They need adequate nutrients. And then you got to kick out all the gunk that's in there. So you got to detox properly. And then you got to think of the microbiome. And that's going to help with the metabolism of the progesterone and the estrogen. And there's so much more, right, than just taking the hormone. All right. Final question, because this is something that I experienced. Do you often see women who get greasy skin or exacerbated acne? So that's, I saw that when I went up in my progesterone. Now I take oral progesterone, but I also have the topical, so I could sometimes mix and match and play. But I just was curious, have you seen that? Because I actually asked the question through Jill's mentorship to Dr. Rosensweet, and he had said he'd seen it once. So it's not common. So I really wanted to ask you, have you seen this?
Not so much with progesterone, but with testosterone.
Yeah.
And I have a theory about this because we carry along a lot of infections, and testosterone is in charge of all protein metabolism in your body. It's a signaler. So if you have a history of autoimmune stuff, allergy, all kinds of stuff, you're going to be very low testosterone. So now you put in testosterone, then you're building a better immune system, and then you're killing off stuff. And where is it going to go? If you don't have your gut and your liver, kidneys all working, what is skin called? The third kidney? It'll come out of your skin. And I think that's part of it. Usually women back down because they know they're getting it. But on the other hand, their immune system has gotten stronger. And 100% of the time I've asked women who report this, I say, do you happen to be constipated? And yes, they are. And I say, why don't you take care of that? And maybe you can stay on the testosterone you're at, because you won't have to be dumping the toxins through
your skin.
Through your skin. That's just a theory.
But well, testosterone and greasy skin, testosterone acne makes sense. But for me, I noticed such a palpable, and I don't have really, to be honest, I'm very lucky. I'm not symptomatic. So I was like, what's going on? But I did notice it. So I backed down and I did notice less greasy oiliness. But I'm just wondering if just switching to a topical might be a better solution.
Okay. And it might be a little more complex than that. And it might be involving sex hormone binding globulin. And because of your progesterone, you shift that. Too much estrogen will stimulate more sex hormone binding globulin. So now you've shifted it. Maybe sex hormone binding globulin has decreased and your own testosterone has now become a little more effective.
Yeah, right. Interesting. Okay, so sex hormone binding globulin, get that checked out. Good idea.
Yeah, it's a good thing to check. I like it for, like if you do a blood test, you get a spot test to give you that moment in time. But the presence of sex hormone binding globulin can give you information. It's stimulated by estrogen and cortisol to have more and more. And when that happens, it binds to all your androgens preferentially. And so you less and less androgen effect. So it's kind of on a time capsule kind of thing to see a little bit about your hormone balance.
Yeah, amazing. Great tip. Thank you. I could talk to you all day, but I'll let you go.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Why don't you tell all the listeners where they can find you and what you offer? I know that you mentioned you offer free 15-minute consults, but you work with patients, right? So maybe just tell everybody where they can find you and what you offer.
Okay, good. My website is the Wellness by Design Project. And I do offer a 15-minute intro because I also believe if you and I meet and what we talk about, if it doesn't resonate, I'm not for you. Just stop right there, right?
Yeah, of course.
And I think that's really important. And so for people who don't have too much trouble, but they need a program and they want to discuss in detail what's going on with them, I offer a 1-hour consultation. And then for more severe cases, a 3-month coaching
package.
So yes, and pretty much we go pretty deep, and I provide some hand holding. It's gets to be kind of intense right at the beginning, but as time goes on, I can say you're on your own, you're good.
Love it. And we will definitely put all that information in the show notes.
Okay, well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Carol, and hopefully we'll speak again.
Okay, thank you, Tara.
Okay, bye.
My pleasure. Bye.
I've put something together for you that I'm really excited about. It's my perimenopause handbook, which is now available for you to download for free. I've added access to a women's health and hormones training of mine, as well as a sneak peek of my popular course, HRT Made Simple. This is a 30-page guide jammed with my top tips for a smoother ride through perimenopause. So it covers macros, diet, information about HRT and exercise, how to tell if you're in perimenopause, perimenopause symptoms, and so much more, including curated podcast episodes of mine to listen to, plus 5 recipes, my favorite midlife supplements, protein powders, and electrolytes. It truly does cover everything you need to know to get you started on an excellent path to optimal health in midlife and also for the decades to come. So just head to the show notes and you can go and download it there completely free. Enjoy. I am not a medical professional, and the information provided in this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. I do not have access to your individual medical history or circumstances, so the content discussed here should not be considered as medical advice. Before making any changes to your diet, lifestyle, or considering the use of supplements, please consult with a qualified healthcare professional or your doctor to ensure it's safe and appropriate for your specific situation. Any decisions you make based on the content of this podcast are at your own discretion and risk. Thank you for tuning in.